from a competitiveness standpoint, it is, I think, abundantly clear that unless we start to create, really large domestic markets for these technologies here in the United States, the center not only of the industry but of the technology is going to go offshore. Now, with wind, we're already the #1 market in the world. We've gone from not being even on the map to being the largest market over the last few years. But of course now China, which has been growing even more rapidly, is on our heels even in that area. I think the real danger area is in solar photovoltaics, where we still are in the commanding heights in terms of a whole range of the technologies. But the market growth is largely in Europe, and the production growth is mainly in Asia at this point. And I think if there's one lesson that you can learn from looking at what has happened in some of these other parts of the world over the last 10 or 15 years, is that no country has ever been successful in an area of new energy technology where they did not have a substantial home market. You're not going to do this purely by exporting to the rest of the world. The good news is, of course, we have incredible renewable resources in this country, and there's no reason we can't have large markets. But to do that, we're going to need to have much, much stronger policies in place. Now let me turn to what the Obama team is now up to. Things are still, sort of getting organized, but I think we can already see pretty clearly what some of the emphasis is going to be going forward, and we can actually probably guess who some of the key players at that sort of sub-cabinet level are likely to be, though it's in some cases not clear exactly which position an individual is going to be in. And of course, the really big focus in the transition has been on the economic recovery plan and how do you create a green economic recovery or a green New Deal, as it has often been put. And it really is a classic example where something that is, in effect, a lemon has been now sort of made into lemonade. I mean, the fact that we've got this economic crisis is actually going to allow, a number of programs to probably be started more quickly than they otherwise would be. On the other hand, I think it's also important, and I think that many of the folks working in the transition well understood that there's also a huge danger here, because there's, and we've certainly heard this in some of the presentations yesterday, that all of this tremendous momentum in the clean energy sector could be lost fairly quickly if you're not able to quickly do some pump priming and have the financial crunch cause a lot of young, small, undercapitalized, vulnerable companies go out of business. And this is something that Washington is very much focusing on. It's a difficult set of problems, but I know a lot of advice has been flowing in from the private sector in terms of things that can be included in this economic recovery package that will really make a difference. Some of the elements I think you can probably look for is there's going to be a big emphasis on retrofitting buildings, particularly on federal buildings, but there will be efforts too to get this into the other kinds of public buildings, but also into the private sector as well. The construction business is, of course, really hurting. This is a way to get a lot of those folks back to work quickly. And of course, buildings accounting for roughly 40% of energy and 40% of emissions are an incredible set of opportunities. There's also going to be a real effort to jumpstart efforts to build out smart grids and also to invest in transmission. With some of this, there's the question of whether many of these projects are so-called shovel-ready and able to go quickly enough, but I expect we'll see a fair amount of that included, at least as a down payment to get started on what needs to be one of the major priorities if we're going to eventually go to really large-scale reliance on renewable resources. We're going to need to have a very different grid than we have in place today. I do believe that there's going to be an effort to create some kind of a public financing facility, whether that be loan guarantees or some direct providing of loans, to try to keep the pipeline going in terms of the project finance, to keep, for example, the tremendous construction boom we've seen in wind power underway. Both the administration but also the media is very, very closely watching what's going on in the clean energy sector. And so that, if there are signs that certain things are not working and a new policy needs to be tried, I think that's going to become very clear very quickly. We'll get a lot of publicity. We'll get a lot of attention in the administration. Again, I think we've never seen anything like the level of public visibility that this sector has. It is, in some ways, the most, publicly compelling part of the economic recovery plan. This sector, I think, is something that is going to get a special attention because of the strategic priority that both the administration and the public place on it. Let me now turn finally to what I think is at least equally and probably more important than the short-term stimulus and recovery, the public spending kinds of things, because spending public money on investing in new energy technologies shouldn't be the way forward, other than to get through a particular economic crisis. And I think that there are really three major areas where the administration is going to have to concentrate its efforts and also, frankly, work with state and local governments if we are going to get the kind of transformation of the energy system that's needed. First is getting a price on carbon, of course. And here, this is probably the part of the agenda that faces the most political challenges, because we know that there are major parts of the economy and there are substantial parts of the Congress, and not just on the Republican side, that are going to resist the kind of cap-and-trade legislation that is likely to begin moving forward over this year. But I think that it is absolutely clear that putting a price on carbon is essential. It's not just getting the price signal right, but it's also recognizing that the marketplace itself fundamentally doesn't work, has all kinds of structural impediments and barriers, and it is at least equally important that you fix those as raising the price. And in fact, if you fix those problems, raising the price will have a much bigger impact.